Hello and welcome to Think Watercolour. Today I'm going to be demonstrating from this picture that I took recently in Sandiway in Cheshire. It's a picture of a winter field, and what attracted me about the scene was the framing of the branches and the leaves. The leaves are what's left of the autumn leaves, green going to brown. There's a stump here of an old tree covered in ivy. Foreground is full of bracken, but the leading lines of the ploughed field leading to this tree just attracted me, and I thought this makes a nice frame. You've got dark against light, you've got warm against cold, you've got a lot of elements in this composition that really work. So let's get started and see how it turns out. I've sketched the image out on a block of, this is Baohong, Chinese Baohong pure cotton watercolour paper. It's got a lovely rough finish, and the block is 310 by 230 millimeters. Just using some cobalt blue here for the sky and some Naples yellow just to try and indicate a wintry sky. Just use some clear water between the blue and the yellow, and just below the yellow, just to give a lighter horizon behind the distant hedge of trees and bushes. I may have gone a bit dark on the sky, but I'll have a look at that later. Just using the same cobalt blue with a little touch of permanent rose just to make it a little bit more purpley, just for some of the shadows. It's a fairly dull day, not brilliant, not bright sunshine, but there are some shadows, but they're fairly hard to discern, so just rough indication of where they would be. Just using a number 0 rigger brush here, just to pick up the tooth of the paper in the foreground. I've just added some burnt sienna to the Naples yellow just to darken it slightly for the ruts in the soil that are a bit further away. They appear a little bit lighter. I'll add some darker colour as they come towards us. Just a touch more burnt sienna there. Just added a touch of sepia just to darken it a little more. These are the leading lines that are the most important. I was quite careful about sketching these in, get them right, because they're the lines that will take the eye into the painting. It's all about understanding where a vanishing point would be. They all radiate out from a point beyond that individual tree. And as they're further away, they're less distinct, the ruts. A bit more sepia to darken it. Just feel it needs a little bit more strength in these ruts that are right in front of us. Not sure what crops were here during the summer. I think they're root crops, maybe carrots. Not quite sure. I know they do grow carrots in one of the fields along here, so it's possible they are carrots, but could be anything. Just adding a little bit more detail in the foreground as it gets closer to us. This is all just bits of stubble left over from the last harvest. Again, using the roughness of the paper just to pick up the tooth, just to indicate some of the areas where the stubble's further away, less distinct ruts at this distance. I've just added some jadeite green to what's left of the cobalt blue, and just mixed in some of the Naples yellow and burnt sienna just to create this grey-green for the distant hedge and trees. They're fairly indistinct in the photograph, so just trying to block them in. I just want to make that individual tree stand out. It's a focal point of the painting, so I'll paint the branches a bit darker later. Just keeping this wash wet and adding some darker mix to the base where it would be in shadow, and that will bleed up into the wet area. Just add a little bit of ultramarine there just to darken that a little bit more. And I can see that the sky's dried darker than I was hoping, so I will attend to that towards the end of the painting. I'll just see how it looks once I start painting the branches in. I'm just using the side of a number 4 sable brush here just to pick up the tooth of the paper to indicate some snow and some bits of soil sticking through the snow in the near foreground, mixing in some of the other colours so that it's not all one colour. This is a number 3 rigger, and I've mixed up some ultramarine and burnt sienna for the branches hanging down into the painting from the trees above. Just using this number 3 for the thicker branches. I'll switch to a number 0 rigger shortly for the thinner branches and twigs. Not being too slavish about copying the photograph, just trying to get a good indication of what it was like. This is the number 0 rigger now for the thinner branches. Just mixed up some more ultramarine and burnt sienna for this tree stump. Just adding a little bit more of the burnt sienna into the mix there. Bit of variety in colour. It's going to dry very dark anyway, so and it will be covered in green leaves for the ivy. Again, just using the side of the brush just to indicate some snow lying in patches on the ground in the foreground here. A lot of this will be covered up with the undergrowth once I paint that, but it's always a good idea to paint it because it will show through in places. Just using that zero rigger, number 0 rigger, just to put the detail of that focal point tree in. Not being too picky about it, keeping it loose. This is some burnt sienna and a touch of jadeite green, just to create these autumn leaves that have just turned from green to brown and are ready to drop. Quite often leaves cling on into the early winter. Just varying the colours. Some burnt sienna and some yellow ochre in these leaves. I always try to keep the colours that I use for these paintings to a minimum. This is more jadeite green for the ivy leaves on that tree stump. Adding a touch of burnt sienna just to vary the tone a little bit. Again, using a variety of browns and browny greens for these leaves at the top of the painting. Trick is not to overdo it. Most artists will tell you it's knowing when to stop when you're doing things like this. That comes with experience, I guess. Just using the same mix for the foreground and dragging some whiter lines out with the edge of an old credit card. Just adding a few more of the thin branches at the top left of the painting. Again, not going over the top. Few splashes from the rigger on the page. So I'm turning 3 of them into birds. Rule of 3. Always use an odd number when you're doing things like that. It always seems to be more balanced. And we're done. What I've done here is I let the painting dry and had a look at it after about an hour. Decided to soften the blue in the skyline by, all I did was I put a very light wash of very clean water gently over the top of the painting and then dabbed off some of the blue pigment with a clean piece of kitchen towel just to deaden the blue a little bit. It was just a little bit too blue for me. And I think it's made the painting much better for it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something from this demonstration, and if you enjoyed it, please give it a like. Always helps with YouTube. Do subscribe and hit the notification button or bell rather, for future videos. And thanks again for watching.